After Speaker Pelosi's briefing with reporters at the White House about her meeting with President Trump, shortly thereafter she spoke to reporters in the Capitol.
Good afternoon. We just came from a most unsatisfactory meeting at the White House. The meeting started by the president saying he never invited any of us there. We asked for the meeting, and without even going into that. As Speaker of the House, I reported to the president that shortly before the meeting, we had a vote in the Congress, 354 to 60, opposing his actions that he took in Syria, calling upon the Turks to exercise restraint, asking us to have humanitarian assistance to the Kurds, especially the children and the rest of that, as well as, most importantly, asking the president what his plan was to fight ISIS now that he had disrupted what was going on in Syria. He couldn't handle it. He just couldn't handle it. But 2-1, the Republicans voted to oppose what he was doing in Syria. He just couldn't handle it, so he kind of engaged in a meltdown, and we were trying to get the answer. What is your clear plan that this resolution asked for how we fight ISIS? It was very sad. It was very sad. Mr. Hoyer, did you want to say?
Well, we have obviously a crisis. We had a resolution that said the policy that we are pursuing and that was taken was not agreed to by an overwhelming vote of the House of Representatives. We needed a reasonable, rational discussion between the President and the co-equal branch of government, the House and the Senate. Unfortunately, the President came in, to my observation, angry and defensive. And frankly, it got worse from there. We did have an explanation of what was being executed, but we had no response to the Speaker and the Majority Leader Schumer's question, what is our plan from here? At that point in time, the meeting very shortly thereafter deteriorated into a very disrespectful assertion about the Speaker of the House, who is, after all, third in line to be President of the United States and heads up the Congress of the United States as the Speaker. It was obvious that the meeting was going to get angrier and more defensive, and we felt that the meeting was no longer a meeting in which we thought we would get useful discussion and results, and so we left. But it is sad for our country that at a time of crisis, the President, who said, first of all, he didn't invite us, we didn't invite ourselves, and we didn't ask for the meeting. As I understand, the Speaker did ask for a briefing of all the members, Republicans and Democrats, of what had happened and was happening. Rather, we were invited down to the White House, and although he did not walk out, as he did in a meeting that we had on infrastructure, in which, as you recall, we came out of the first meeting on infrastructure in a very positive mode, saying the President and the Democrats had a very positive meeting about infrastructure. Unfortunately, this was not a positive meeting. Unfortunately, at a time of crisis, the President chose to be derogatory and accusatory, and it was unfortunate for the country.
What's really sad about it is I pray for the President all the time, and I tell him that. I pray for his safety and that of his family. I think now we have to pray for his health, because this was a very serious meltdown on the part of the President. I expressed my appreciation for what our troops have done in Syria, and by all accounts from the generals, they have just really done the job very well that he's now pulling out. The explanation for that is what we asked for all members of the House to hear, and that was supposed to be tomorrow, but now then they somehow postponed it today. My concern that I expressed to the President is that Russia has for a long time always wanted to have a foothold in the Middle East, and now he has enabled that to happen. And I have concerns about all roads leading to Putin, whether it's a foothold in the Middle East, whether it's placing in doubt any military assistance to Ukraine, which is to the benefit of Putin, whether it's placing in doubt our commitment to NATO, Article 5, which again, all roads lead to Putin. The list goes on and on. That seemed to have angered the president. But in any event, this is very serious. ISIS, the protection of our homeland, it's an oath we take to protect and defend. This is very serious, and it was very sad that I think probably the president couldn't handle the fact that the vote was so overwhelming in opposition to his what he did in Syria, and again, not being able to give us a clear picture of what his plan was to protect us from ISIS.
Madam Speaker, when you say that, you said that you pray for his health now in the aftermath of what you're calling a meltdown. Are you suggesting that he's mentally unwell in any way?
I'm not talking about mentally. I'm just talking about handling the truth.
Madam Speaker, the most powerful tool that Congress has is the power of the purse. We have to fund the government by middle of November here. Would you foresee, and why wouldn't you put some strictures in an appropriations bill to reverse the policy and mandate that those troops go back? Wouldn't that be the automatic solution?
I don't think that is a possibility.
Why not?
That's harder than you might think. The president is the commander-in-chief. The decisions that are made hopefully are made with the concurrence of the Department of Defense and our men and women there. This is what the president did was dangerous. And again, we have not only troops there, but equipment there and the rest. I don't know if he understood the situation, but I don't think that that's something you can deal with in an appropriation.
Let me just say, Jen, we worked very hard to open up the government. It was shut down when the Republicans were in charge, and most of the government agencies were closed. We are prepared to cooperate with the administration and with our Republican colleagues to ensure that the government is funded and serving the American people and defending the American people. And as you know, we passed 96% of government funding to the Senate. The Senate has not passed any appropriation bill. We're concerned about that, but we're going to work very hard between now and November 21st and thereafter, if necessary, I hope it's not necessary, to get agreement so that the government can be operational. The American people expect that, and that is our duty.
Madam Speaker, did the president bring up impeachment at all, and do you think that factored into his behavior towards you?
He did not. I don't know what got interesting to his behavior, but that was not a subject that was brought up at all. No.
Madam Speaker, Leader McCarthy came to the mics after you folks left and said that after you left, there were some Democrats who remained, and he described the meeting after you left as productive. And also, by the way, saying somehow that you managed to make the meeting political and more about the way you and the leadership were being treated.
Well, maybe that's what he thought when I said that the House of Representatives voted for 354 to 60 against the president's policy. Maybe he considers that political, but I don't have any intention of spending any time on anything that Leader McCarthy said.
I work closely with Mr. McCarthy, and I tried to be constructive, and I think many times he tries to be constructive. But I don't consider him an objective source of information on President Trump.
What does this mean? What does Trump's behavior towards you mean for working together with him on USMCA and drug pricing and other things? Can you still work with him?
It's not important in that regard. We will do what we need to do for the good of the American people, and that has nothing to do with him. There may be some collateral benefit to him when we successfully achieve some things for the American people. But there's no reason not to do it because there's collateral benefit to him. And again, we're here for the American people. We're not here measuring what we do as to what it means to him.
Is there any doubt in your mind that the House will be...
Do you think future meetings with the president are no longer necessary because of the way that these meetings have blown up in the past?
Well, we were invited to a meeting at the White House, and the president immediately started off by saying that we asked for the meeting, which we had not. But, you know, that's a minor thing. It was not a particularly hospitable opening to the meeting, but who cares? Who cares? What matters is the president made a very dangerous decision when it came to Syria. and the Turks and the Kurds, and without much understanding of what was at risk there. 354 members of the House concurred that they opposed the president's decision. I think it rattled him.
Is there any doubt that the House will impeach? Is there any doubt the House will impeach the president at this point?
That's a different conversation that will go down the path where truth takes us, and then when that decision is made, that decision is made. But that hasn't been made, and I'm not even going there. These are two different conversations. And I disagree with the policy of the President of the United States. That is a matter to have the debate. That's the civic debate that we would have. And that's a matter for the elections.
Madam Speaker,
impeachment is a completely different subject.
And what did the president say that got this meeting on the wrong foot? Leader Schumer said he called you a third-rate politician. You said you were sympathetic.
Grade.
A third grade. Thank you for clarifying.
Grade. And I said, I wish you were a politician.
What did he say that made clear that this was not going to be a productive meeting?
That was not. The fact is that we were trying to have a factual basis, a calm factual basis about the security of our country. There were certain, shall we say,
there were a number of things that the president said which were obviously meant to be derogatory towards the Democrats generally, and President Obama in particular, that were not conducive to any sort of rational, reasonable discussion about a crisis that confronts the country of the president's making. So the meeting went downhill relatively quickly, unfortunately, from our perspective.
Referring to President Obama's policy in Syria, or more generally?
I don't want to get into the specifics, but it became a derogatory meeting from the president's side, and that it went downhill.
I just might close by saying this. I think it's a very sad commentary on the President of the United States that he doesn't have enough confidence in what he is doing to listen to other points of view, especially the overwhelming vote of the House of Representatives, and have some level of respect for that. And again, it shook him up, melted him down, and he behaved accordingly. Does that mean we can't have future meetings? No. Just depends on the subject, I guess. Does it mean we can't pass things that working together? If we can, we will. Because it is a collateral benefit to him, will never be a deterrent for us to do what is right for the American people. But there has to be some level of values, of calmness, of patriotism, a love of our country and our system, and not a personal invective because he didn't like the way a vote went on any given day.
It was mentioned.
Now, as I said, I want to end where I began. We praised our troops and the wonderful work that they have done, all just very praiseworthy, always. But again, in this particular instance, we documented how well they have protected the American people from ISIS. And so we thank them for that, and I conveyed that to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, as well as to the Secretary of Defense. But the fact is also, the President said, I promised to bring the troops home, and that's what I'm doing. My comment is home, Saudi Arabia. Now we're sending troops to Saudi Arabia. What's that about? So he doesn't like to have to answer questions of that kind.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
A House Administration Subcommittee will hold a hearing on voting rights and election administration. Watch live Thursday morning at 10 Eastern.